should we come to order?
Anybody Zoom or
No.
chair
Not
pro
yet.
tem?
Does anybody need an agenda?
No, I haven't.
Unless you printed them.
Unless you
I have. Yes, please take them.
If you printed them, I might as well.
I printed my own.
I know, it's weird.
I couldn't haul my laptop.
Well, let me keep
There's
one
two.
so I can.
It's busy processing
There's
something.
two
at
there.
home, so.
That's good.
All right.
Yeah, it's
A
actually
device
more,
I don't
it's more
really have.
valuable than my
Okay, I can-
laptop at this
We'll
point.
call the meeting to order at 4:02, and I think we should probably do the roll call first. I have it in wrong order. So I name people and they say that they're here.
Yes.
Okay, Denise,
Here,
DJ,
I am here.
Tom,
Here.
Mike,
Yes.
and
Here.
select person.
Liaison, Sherry, here.
Okay. Okay, so in the absence of a chairman or chairperson, we need to elect a new one. And unless anybody, I guess the floor is open for nominations. And
Do we have a quorum?
We do.
Yeah.
So, if I may,
Yes, please.
I think the two members of the fire department who were associate members, I've suggested to them and to the chair of the select board that we invite them as opposed to having them as members of the committee. In light of where we are on battery storage generally, which I'm happy to talk about a little bit later, and just the burdens on their time. I think they've been good contributors, but I think going forward, unless I miss my guess, their expertise is not going to be at the core of whatever it is this committee decides to do. So that means we're down to 7, and by that reckoning, the only people who are missing is that I'm no longer a member, and Pame is not here. So, but I think there's a point. That's one way of saying we have a point.
Okay.
Perfect.
Oh,
Okay,
we're
so
close.
I'm not sure how I do this, but I would entertain a motion to elect Denise as chairperson of
I'll
the
second
committee.
that. Sorry.
Do you mind if I close the door?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining?
I'm going to abstain because it's me.
Yeah.
Okay, it is a vote, and I'll turn it over to you.
Wow. Thank you. Let me find the agenda. After all that, I printed it. Thank you for your, oh, this
Here's
is
an
the
extra
agenda.
one.
Duh. Thank you. I appreciate,
Make sure you have the right one. Yep.
I appreciate your confidence in me. We'll see if I can earn it. And thank you for your service, Sherry. I don't think this would be happening at all had it not been for some long-winded discussions over coffee. So, much appreciated. So we've done the call to order, election of the chair, and the roll call. Why don't we, can we move on to approval of the minutes? Do you have copies
I have
of March?
I have copies.
Well,
Yeah. Did I send out my actual scribbled notes? It looked like that's what I had done.
No, I think you did.
Pass it around.
Thank you. Let's just take a moment to review them. Yes.
Well, from Linda, I got like 3 agendas. I don't know from the minute. It says agenda. I don't know if there were the minutes in there inside.
Oh,
They're in June 22. Just FYI.
okay. So you'll also need the minutes from April.
March
So we got-
12th.
We have March 12th and April 9th. And
So-
I have a printout copy of April 9th if anybody wants to share mine. I've already reviewed.
Did you get off of this email? Unless you just maybe called it agenda by mistake. I could look,
Yeah,
couldn't I? No,
that's
different.
that's an agenda.
That's the real agenda. Okay. All right. Mystery. Kind of soft.
So, do we have, Linda, do you have any other copies of April 9th?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Do you need them?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So why don't we start with March 12th?
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions or issues with the minutes from March 12th?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I-
Yes.
I have a minor concern, which is just, in the battery storage and public safety implication section, it says concerns include, I wonder if we should sort of explicitly say that the concerns expressed were about, fire danger from lithium batteries malfunctioning. I don't know if that, is that a,
Shall we suggest that amendment, that we just amend that,
How about, sorry,
please?
just add to that end of that sentence,
Right,
as to their fire exposure,
okay,
something like that.
something like that, yeah.
As to their potential fire exposure.
That sounds fair to me.
any further questions or issues with the minutes from March 12th? Can I have a motion to approve as amended?
I make a motion to approve the March 12th minutes as amended.
I second.
All those approving?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, the ayes have it. And then, let's turn to April 9th. Give everybody a moment to review those. Any suggested revisions or problems with the minutes as stated?
I make a motion to approve the April 9th minutes.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. The minutes for April 9th are approved as stated. I'm just assuming that I'm supposed to sign off on this, so. Can we have those down to Linda? Thank you. So, the balance of the agenda was just to review our, the committee matters that we've had at hand, consider a little bit of new business, and think of any other new business that is not reasonably anticipated 48 hours prior to the posting of this. Are there any additions? Is there anything anyone would like to add to our agenda for today? Sherry?
If I may,
Yes.
I'm curious to know what people are hearing about the status of the climate legislation on the House side. I know the Senate,
State
Yes.
level.
yes, the Senate passed a bill I think last week, or no, the week before. And it then was supposed to go to the House. So I was in touch with MMA on it. And they have been awaiting, a bill and submission of amendments. And in the meantime, it looks as if a study order was issued. And since I'm not a person familiar with Massachusetts legislative procedure, I'm not sure, I can research and understand what this could mean, but I would be interested to know what in fact it does mean.
So, sent to study means it's been canned,
Mm-hmm.
but sent to a study, what was the term you used, study?
It said a study order, let me just.
Study order. I don't know if that's a, let me look. I'm just looking at a article, FYI, that was published in the Greenfield Recorder newspaper, July 2. It was an opinion piece.
Mm-hmm.
If I can stop doing this. Stop. And save that part. It was interesting that it's from Western Mass because Western Mass faces some of the issues that Wareham has, right? Low population and lots of land.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So this is what it looks
oh, the actual,
like, yeah.
okay.
What is the House bill number?
It's H4778. Those are all the bills that have been submitted on
That's interesting, okay. I'm
various.
just looking at people, of course. So there's a fair amount of Western Mass. Let's see, signed on to this. Site commission report. Okay, so it appears to not have been sent to study, killed, but they're actually going to look further into it.
Okay.
Yeah, but as you, just from the daily newspaper or the daily news on TV, you probably know that they're overdue with the budget and that they officially have to be out by July 31, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is probably their way to say, we're not killing it, but we're going to do some further, studying during the summer and
Okay.
come back.
Does this mean that they don't intend to fund it this cycle?
Probably not.
Yeah, I doubt it.
So Sherry, by bringing this up, are you asking us to take a look at this and maybe be ready to discuss it during our next meeting?
I get what I was bringing it up because I think this affects what this committee can or can't productively do.
Okay.
And if, for example, the House were to rush into a debate on a companion piece of legislation, and we could expect before the end of September a final piece of legislation signed by the governor that says this is how renewable project siting is going to happen, this is how evaluation of the projects is going to look. And the Senate bill is a pretty sweeping change to the status quo. It's basically saying, with respect to solar, there are big projects and little projects. Big projects are over 25 megawatts, little projects under 25 megawatts. The towns will retain control over the small projects, i.e. 25 megawatts, which is bigger than anything this town has seen. And I'm not sure how many of them have been in the state, but that's just an aside. With the smaller ones, the towns will retain authority, but they will do it under bylaws that the state has passed. And processes that the state has enacted, and in a time frame of 1 year or less, where the projects will be deemed to be automatically approved.
Mm.
And then they also say, and we're going to do community benefit agreements, which, as far as I know, haven't been done across the board in this state, but have been done elsewhere for sure. And lots of attention being paid to economic justice populations, environmental justice populations, lots of attention being paid to environmental issues. And so you look at all of that and say, I mean, that could be anything. Except that we would know at the end of it, there would be bylaws in place that this town would have to follow that are likely to be different than what we have. And so that's a huge, big thing to try to study.
Right.
There's also a lot of money in it for, that the state would give to communities in order to equip them to engage in these processes. Who knows what that would mean? There, this country is full of grants of money for consumer representatives who either don't do much with it or never spend it, or, I mean, it's like a big unknowable thing that could be facing us. But with the study bill, it's not going to be facing us anytime soon. So it sort of leaves open the question, what doesn't make sense to look at that and try to prepare for an unknowable, because we don't know what the
Right.
House is going to do.
Yeah, exactly,
Right.
yeah. I was
Oh.
gonna say that probably we just have to wait to see ultimately what happens before, we move forward with something only to find out that it was all for naught,
Well,
The concern that I have though is if there'll be now an incentive for companies to build greater than 25 megawatts. So instead of a lot of smaller ones coming in that are less obtrusive, now we're gonna have monster ones because they say, if the towns doesn't wanna give somebody, the permit for less than 25, then say, well, we'll build more than 25, and, it's kind of like 40B, it's like, it bumps out to the state and then the town has no say over it. So it could have an adverse effect on the town, but counter to that, then if you include the environmental justice component in that, we can say that, as a more underserved community than a lot of others in the state, why should we be burdened with any more of them, big or small?
Sherry,
Yeah.
do you have an idea of how much area a 25 megawatt project takes up?
So the usual math is each megawatt is 5 to 10 acres.
Okay.
So that's a very big project. I'm not certain, and I guess if you aggregated a number,
5 to 10 acres, you said?
per megawatt.
So when you look at, for 25, you need 25 to 50 acres.
I know, it's hard to visualize. I wish we could, the one I know best, just because you drive by it, is the one behind Target, and I wish we could use that as a standard. It's like,
Yeah.
football fields is the way I kind of know what sizes are.
Yeah.
But that one would be like, I don't know what that one is.
Yeah.
It's just the one that.
That's only several acres though, that's not that big.
Okay.
It's
so
not.
Yeah,
No.
It's
That could
not.
just
I
be,
mean, it
that might be
probably,
1 megawatt.
it's, yeah, it might be one or maybe two at the most.
Okay,
So
all right.
it's
That's
pretty
good.
small.
That's
Yeah.
good to know. That's,
It's
I mean, it helps.
highly visible but small.
Yeah.
Well, but that's good
Yeah.
to know, because
Yeah.
it's hard to.
And then you
visualize.
have to wonder what constitutes one, solar array. Like, if somebody has 10 parcels that are all owned by one company, that they're operating as one unit, even though they're scattered all over the place.
Right.
And that will depend on where the legislature goes with that, because you
Right.
could have somebody, like, you gotta have 125 acres, to 250 acres for it to
Yes.
be, 25 megawatts.
Right.
But they say, okay, well, we have, 10 acres here and 30 acres here and 20 acres there, and we're treating this all as one array. Then where does that fall? So that will depend on how the legislation is written as to whether it's contiguous as one location, or if it's, you know, a conglomeration of a bunch of parcels owned by one entity.
Right,
Mm.
yeah, I didn't notice if it was in there,
Yeah,
what this particular treatment would be. I did notice one other thing, which was of concern to me, which is that it looks as if part of this is this, for the state to do a competitive procurement of solar power. And so that means that developers will be competing on the basis of price. It looks to me.
Okay.
Maybe that's not how it will work, but, so I think competition on the basis of price does have developers incentivized to do larger projects as well. And so, that's another issue.
And so, just as how this will play out at the State House. So, I know this just because I was washing the car and a state senator candidate walked down the driveway. So, the whole legislature is up again for re-election. So that'll happen in November. They'll be seated in January, and then they start a 2-year session. So every bill has to be reintroduced. Looking quickly at what was done there, I saw a couple legislators from Western Mass, so they'll probably do it again because this is a Western Mass issue. So just FYI.
Yeah.
And then MMA, you know, their general goal is to get the maximum amount of local aid to cities and towns, at least amount of strings. So they generally do. I'll be there.
Mm-hmm.
But when you said, I forget what the term you called it, it sounded like the community benefit agreement.
Yeah,
It sounded not far from the marijuana shop agreements that, you know.
Yeah.
So that will be the carrot for cities and towns to say, well, if we can get an annual payment out of this.
I have some experience with those from offshore wind, and there's a kind of a wide variety in how those can be constructed, or
Mhm.
even with whom they can be signed. So, yeah, that certainly, if that comes to the town, there should be a certain amount of thought over, okay, if we get a bunch of money, what should we do with it?
And I think in the marijuana world, it was wild, wild west for a while, and I think the state kind of stepped in and said, okay, we're gonna have some guardrails. So
Yeah.
some of these agreements kind of are not overly burdensome, but also get money to cities and towns.
Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, opens up all kinds of possibilities.
Right.
And so the question is, you know, what can and should this committee do? You know, given those unknowns, and given, you know, what our capabilities are, what does it make sense to focus on? And one thought that I had was, I have sat in on some MMA sessions on, you know, towns doing sustainability programs.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's essentially, you go over your town's, you know, carbon production, what are the sources of it, what is the amount of it? And you just really catalog it, and then you, I think a corporate sustainability program, Linda, would probably be pretty similar. Going over, you know, how do we emit carbon, and how do we limit our emissions, how do we achieve efficiencies, and where are all the sources of savings for us as a town. And that's one possibility. And there was an article in the Globe, I think, a bit ago, basically saying there's money to do sustainability programs, it's all going to the rich towns. Because they're the ones who have grant writing officers and sustainability officers. And if you don't have one, you don't do this because, like Wareham, you're, you know, trying to, you know, tread water furiously and keep your nose above. So that would be one possibility. And, I mean, there's also the possibility of again, what makes sense for this town? What are we, what are our possibilities, and where would we have common ground among, you know, various people in town?
Okay. And I was thinking, when I was reading the Greenfield Recorder, another article recently, still to do that, we started this mission statement, which we should finish. Started a questionnaire, which we should finish up.
Yes.
So we still want to do some education on rental versus ownership of solar panels. And then just a couple more things that I just thought of during this conversation is to do a calculation of, for big solar fields, how many megawatts per Wareham resident. For small solar fields, how many megawatts per resident. And it'd be interesting to someday, somebody will do that same calculation in other cities and towns to get a sense of if we're above average or below.
You mean,
We're gonna be way below, but we're gonna be way above,
Yeah,
you know, the Maldens and some of those of the world, because there's no place to put this.
let's see, solar production per citizen, okay.
Big
So as
solar
a
production and
measure,
little solar production, if you could break it down that way. You can do the big one, so really 3 calculations, right? All solar production, big solar, small solar.
Potential or existing?
Existing, just to know where we are. That sounds like something that like Commonwealth magazine would do, but I don't, you know, I can poke around and see if I can find that. And then lastly, it'd be also nice to know how many, I still am struck by rooftops that don't have solar. So how many rooftops in town, how many commercial rooftops in town have solar? Like, it would just be interesting to know, and I don't know if there's a centralized place for that.
Well, one of the things that we learned.
The electrical permit would tell you that.
that's true.
One of the things we learned when doing the solar bylaw committee was that a lot of commercial properties are not suited to having solar on their roofs because of the type of roof. Especially in some of the big commercial things like the Target or whatever, they have what's called a floating roof system. And solar can't be mounted on that.
Okay.
It's you know, there's not enough, it's not enough solid structure to mount solar on it.
That solves a lot of my
But
questions.
but you know, that also becomes a question, is can we recommend that future builds be required to allow, you know, to build with a roofing structure that would at least allow a percentage of the property to be covered with solar, or with, you know, some sort of renewable energy output. So, you know, that was something that we wanted to chase down after we were wrapping up doing the solar bylaw for ground mounted solar at the time. But I believe it was Ken Buckland that told us at that point, kind of explained how that was a problem. But, you know, I look above us and wonder why there's not solar going on to the new school roof. Why isn't there solar on the new elementary school now? You know, and so on. So my understanding was the elementary school was built and designed with the possibility of installing solar after, but I don't know why that's not happening.
But what I heard is.
Go ahead.
What I heard is that a company did come in and propose to put solar on the roof, but only if the town would agree to buy all of the output of it. And the reason.
Yeah, we have an agreement already with somebody for green energy that kind of precludes us from
That's the other
buying
reason.
it from somebody else.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, the town has no ability to buy additional green energy, and in fact probably has
How
extra.
old is
Yeah,
that?
we
How
actually
old is
don't-
that agreement, and how, you know, my question is, how old is that agreement? How long does it last? And is there a way to renegotiate? I mean, it's-
Apparently not.
No,
so-
because I've heard the town administrator have that conversation a few times now,
Yeah.
where he said, our hands are pretty much tied.
Yeah.
Right.
That, you know, because people approached him and said, you know, why aren't we putting solar here and why aren't we putting, and he said, well, we already have an excess of green energy that we're committed to, and we're not using all of that, so there's no way for us to take on a burden of even more, so.
Now, the town should not be the only possible customer. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
there should be a program that would enable a developer to put solar on the roof and sell it to someone else,
Yeah.
or to, just
Yeah.
onto the grid as a
Right.
resource.
Right, and then that's, I guess that, therein lies the question. If the town can't buy it, who's the customer? You know, who's the potential I mean, we're building all this solar.
Well, any consolidator would be able to.
I'm sorry?
A consolidator, that, energy
Yeah.
consolidator should
Right.
buy it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could just go on.
We're
we have-
minors.
Yeah, we have a competitive market in New England, so at least theoretically, a resource should be able to be sold right onto the grid, and there should be buyers bidding for it.
Right. I mean, but my question for that comes back to some of the things that we ran into with the solar fields, and that is, if it's a building that has solar on it that you're trying to sell back into the grid, how, you know, what's the wiring situation? You know, the solar fields were, we were unable to be sited in places where they couldn't, where they weren't near the transmission lines to go into the grid. So how is that any different for a building? I don't, this is a mechanical thing I don't
Yeah.
understand. But, you know, and, you know, the other question is, if that's an easy thing to do, then why is it so hard to do it with a solar field? I recognize that there's way more energy
It's
coming
bigger.
off of a solar field than a building, but,
And usually in a place, I mean, if it's a field in the middle of nowhere, it's just hard to.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The
But,
electrical grid infrastructure is not uniform across the landscape.
yeah, look at Texas.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even within our town.
Yeah, no, I'm kidding. Right, so I guess there are questions to ask about this. One
Mhm.
is, going back to Sherry, your point of bringing this up, we need to educate ourselves on what this new law is. It sounds as though the House has passed this bill and it's gone to
Senate.
study? The Senate passed it.
Yeah,
Has the House yet voted on it?
no.
So the Senate passed it, it's gone into study. The House will take it up sometime after the election.
And, yeah,
Basically,
it's
right.
or the next.
Right, so, I mean, we're looking at
21
months or
days.
maybe 6 months or longer before this.
Oh, that'll be,
It'll be more
yeah,
than
so
that.
they won't go into the new session until the start of 25.
Okay, so we have 7 or 8 months anyway.
But there's still an opportunity for it to be taken up before the end of this session.
Yeah, 21 days, yeah.
Is there?
I mean, yeah, but if someone, yeah, if the Senate said send it to us, to a study.
I
not
guess-
to study, but.
I guess my thinking is, we need to, as a committee, need to know and understand this. I wasn't even aware of it, I've been in la land, clearly. But
It's
you know,
easy to miss. I mean, it's hard to figure out what's going on with this thing.
Right, well, it's, yeah, and, and I think that's part of the challenge is the governor has a very ambitious climate agenda that she's pushing through. And it is, I think it's easy for smaller places like us to get run over it because we're not in the middle of it.
Mhm.
So I guess my thinking is, I would entertain a motion that we study this law,
Mhm.
and when we meet next time, be ready to discuss it and think about what actions, if any, we might need to take or considerations we need to think about in terms of what are the implications, not only for this committee, because I think we can find other things to think about, even if
Mhm.
that's not, if that's gonna tie our hands in terms of trying to limit or control whatever they do with for example, solar. But but I think it'll also open up opportunities for us to identify other things we could do. So again, I would like to entertain a proposal from someone that we all take it upon ourselves to read and learn about this particular piece of legislation and be ready to come back with ideas for how that might affect the committee in our next meeting.
Well, I think we should go beyond that. I think if we're gonna review what the Senate has passed, we should probably comment, you know, to our Senate representative, our feelings on the proposed legislation. Not that it'll go anywhere, but at least they'll be made aware of where, and, you know, obviously, that would have to be, you know, approved by the select board, but we could draft something that we would give to the select board, and then the select board would say, these are some of the concerns that we have with the proposed, you know, Senate bill, and, you know, we'd like for them to take some of those comments under consideration. It may not go anywhere, but then at least we've done something, rather than just saying, well, we've read the Senate bill, and, okay, we understand what they're proposing, but that doesn't really do anything, other than, you know, we're aware of it, but, you know, if there's some onerous things in there, or things that we think are good, then, you know, one way or the other, we should comment on that. And then,
Can I ask a question about this? This is about the legislative process. So the Senate passed a bill was introduced to the House. When they take it up, how likely is it that they'll amend this thing so far that if we pour a lot of energy into, we'll be looking at a first draft, and then the second draft is very different.
It's unclear. They'll certainly amend something.
yeah,
How much they'll do, I don't know.
yeah.
But once they amend it.
But this
vote
would be
on
the
it.
time to do that, for us to get our comments in before
Before
they've hashed out all these amendments, and then all of a sudden, you know, everything that we were objecting to is still in there, and they don't have any feedback from, you know,
Constituencies.
the towns,
Right.
you know. And there would be an opportunity for us to say, you know, we consider ourselves, you know, an environmental justice community. And so, you know, it has more weight to say that, you know, these things that you're proposing may be burdensome to our town.
So here's a tough timing thing.
Yeah, of course.
Well,
The select board is meeting tonight and tomorrow night. The earliest that this could be taken up by the select board is tomorrow night, under 48-hour business. That would mean that we would have to have a letter ready to go tomorrow night.
We
And
need
And
to
we haven't
look
even
at
read the
it.
bills.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not gonna happen.
No.
Yeah,
So
no.
when is the next meeting?
it's 2 weeks later.
Can I suggest that if we meet again in August, we will know, first of all, whether it's been taken up at this session,
Right.
and kind of have a sense of where it's going, and we will have had a chance to
Right. I
think
think that's
and
good.
look.
Right.
Good compromise.
Well, so just full disclosure, I may take a letter to the select board tomorrow night that doesn't really have detail in it, other than to say that,
Make them aware of.
yeah, we're concerned about the loss of local control,
Right.
and concerned about the impact on this community. And just sort of leave it at that, because we don't know more detail than that at this point.
So you're saying we, meaning the Alternative Energy Committee?
I was saying me, because you guys, I've at least read it, scanned it.
Right. I mean, I would be inclined to agree with you, but I didn't even know it existed until you brought it up.
Right.
And
So,
I'm a little uncomfortable,
yeah,
you know, putting the weight of the committee behind it, even though we'll probably be there by the time we finish reading
well,
it.
and Linda, you guys
Jesus,
may not be there. I mean, this is a bill that would probably do a lot of things that, that Makepeace would support. So, you know, this may be one of those times when we're not able to be on the same sled. But and certainly for tomorrow night, there's no way that I think everybody can be on the same sled unless you devote yourselves to reading this bill, which I can guarantee you will be among the the least exciting hours that you've spent recently.
Don't do it in bed.
Hour. I think I just, if I'm looking at the right bill, then it incorporates by reference all these documents, is this right? 4778, right?
What's that the
Well,
number?
that's the study.
Oh, that's
Okay.
the study order, okay.
Yeah.
So what we'd be looking is HB, did you write down the number?
4778, HB,
So that's what you said.
H4778.
Yeah, that's where I am.
Yeah, but Linda, does that make sense to you?
Well, I can tell you that we're probably not doing any kind of advocacy either way.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I do feel like we don't have time
Yeah.
No.
as a committee to do this, but I think that we should, again, I think we should study the bill, be
Yeah.
ready to, maybe to come together at our next meeting and at least capture some ideas of what kind of a response we would want to provide to our elected officials.
But that's different than just making the select board aware of the fact
Right,
that there's a
This is
pending
coming.
bill,
right,
that says this, just basically the short version of what they're proposing. And that's not really taking a position, just explaining
that there's
that
something
it's there.
coming.
Because I'm sure, they're less aware of the bill than we are.
Right.
So just bringing it to their attention,
Mhm.
I don't think is a controversial thing
No.
that we all have to, approve of, just
Mhm.
making it information.
Yeah, I mean, and I think the thing for them is loss of local control.
Yeah,
And that's,
yeah.
it's a big thing for a town to lose its land use planning authorities.
Right.
And that will surprise nobody.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
So are you saying that you're planning to have the Board of Selectmen send a letter regarding this bill
No,
tomorrow?
Not this bill, it's just alerting Giffords and it would only be Giffords, to the possibility that she will be facing legislation that is of concern. Do you see a problem with that?
no,
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've been texting, I have a niece who's works for something called the Green Energy Consumers Alliance and is a lobbyist, so I texted her about this bill. And she's a very cynical type, but she's saying
Oh, that's,
nothing in it will make into, I specifically asked about H4778,
Mhm.
and she said nothing in it will make it into law.
Okay, wow.
I don't know what to say, but I mean,
so,
That's a lot of effort by a lot of people.
yeah,
Wow.
it's a study bill, it's more a trash can than a bill is the other thing my niece is saying.
interesting.
So I don't know what to say, I'm not very familiar with it. these
well, so,
processes
what's,
at all.
what's helpful out of that, though, is that she may be cynical and she may, not have had the best day at work today. But it does
Longer
probably
time period,
mean
longer
that
time
it's not
period.
gonna happen in the next 3 weeks.
Well,
Right.
yeah, and that makes me question going forward with, I mean, you don't want to ask the select board for a letter that ends up being of no use or value whatsoever.
yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that it's worth this group's time to study it between now and the
Absolutely,
next
you're right about
meeting.
that.
And then, consider if we were going to draft some sort of a letter or response to our legislative representatives, maybe be able to point out some points of what that would be and during our next meeting.
Yeah.
But I also think that it's a smart idea for us to be aware of this or other potential legislation that could affect whatever it is we do decide to do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm going to ask again if we can have a recommendation that this committee review that bill and be ready to discuss it during our next meeting and potentially draft points to be sent to our senator or elected officials.
So-
So,
Oh, okay, sorry, it's
Okay.
been moved.
Do I have a second?
I would move to amend,
Yes.
amend to broaden, it was something you said just before you made the motion, which was sort of being aware of pending legislation. So maybe because, and I hate to do this, I'm not this kind of guy typically. The House, sorry, this is my niece again. The House hasn't released its citing climate bill yet. That's expected next week. The Senate passed a bill on citing /climate, that's S-2838. So
So
if,
let's look at both of these bills.
yeah, or, I don't know how to phrase it exactly. I don't want to say, let's pay attention to any relevant bills, because how do we know what's relevant, and we'll waste all our time. But I wanted to make your motion expansive enough so that it wasn't saying, oh, we're gonna look at this one bill.
Right.
How about anything related to the proposal that was approved by the Senate?
Okay.
Yeah.
And then,
So
narrows
that would
it.
include
That
the
narrows it.
governor's original communication
Yeah.
and everything kind of in that chain.
Okay, so, and that's apparently the S-2838. I'm sorry, my niece usually, I'm sorry. But the House version will likely be closer to what gets into the law because the Senate will likely negotiate away sitting provisions for other things that they want. Okay, so it's still,
Citing provisions?
oh, I would guess citing,
Okay.
yeah.
so what's the Senate bill number?
2838?
28.
I can see if I can maybe sort of verify on the website right now.
So the amendment is to review both the House and Senate bills plus the governor's
Citing
citing
council
council. Okay.
report.
SITING?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just like as a thought, just as a, it'd be interesting to ask her when she's, not now, but you know, she's looking at something very specific. And so what'll happen is the new session, they'll pull all the bills that they want to deal with. But even just pulling those very specific bills, it'd be surprising to me if there's no fewer than 100 or 200. There's thousands of bills that are filed. I mean, MMA probably tracks about 8 to 1,200.
Wow.
So would it make sense for us to, and I don't know if this is something that we're allowed to do under the open meeting law, but prior to the next meeting, somehow identify the 2 bills that are active, and so we're all looking at the same thing. I worry that I'm gonna look at one version, you're gonna look at something
Right.
else.
I would say that just, because she's in the biz, just focus on those 2
Okay.
and stuff. You just mass.gov.
Okay.
Which
So
two?
H 4778.
4778.
It's
and
HB, I believe. If you went back on your,
HB 4778
Because it does matter
and
if it's
S
HB or
2838.
That's correct.
So those two.
What's the second one?
2838.
S2838,
And that doesn't,
Okay, yeah, that's the
that doesn't
Senate
appear
bill.
to
and
be
then the
part of
governor's
one.
citing
Yeah.
council report, which is at the base of that, correct?
yeah, so
Okay.
I mean, those seem to be the 2 that are,
Right,
as they say, have legs
for now, until
for
they're
the
tried
next
out
3
for
weeks.
another year.
Exactly.
So we have a motion with an amendment. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Unanimous.
passes.
So I'm
Um,
waffling a little bit at this point about doing a letter.
But,
but-
yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that we can, once we become better versed in it, that would be a discussion item for the next meeting.
Yeah, but.
What,
Well, does
this is
anything-
what now, so what,
If
what do
you're
we
not
do
gonna-
about it?
If you're hesitant about a letter, then, you know, you could bring that up as an informational topic, just as a select board member.
Mhm,
When, you know, say, anything you want to share with the committee, you could say,
mhm.
you know, there's pending legislation, blah, 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 and, you know, and there's concerns about loss of local control over zoning, you know, and that would,
See what
and then
they
you
say.
could cite the bill
Yeah.
and just leave it at that.
But it has no action, then we have the luxury of time to say
Right.
how it specifically affects Wareham. We have this many, you know, we put out this much megawatts for a town this size. Like, we can really just illustrate to both our senator and House members.
Yeah.
Because it helps them to also have that data when they're talking
Mhm. Yeah,
side by side with Western Mass people. Because those people are gonna be standing next to them.
that's,
You know, sometimes I feel like with our committee, we're like-minded people, and we take one step up and two steps back with the winds of change blowing at us. And you know, one of the things that I think it would be important for us to do is look at this particular pieces of legislation to see what we might be able to do, you know, other than think good thoughts and wonder about solar fields in our backyards. But you know, we were looking at, and I just want to move us along because we're at 10 till 5, and I don't want to. I want to be mindful of people's time. But we had committee matters that we had been discussing before about looking at a possible consultant, funding opportunities, bylaws for small cell solar and other committees, and the draft survey. And I almost feel like we should put a pin in things for a moment. I don't want to discount the work that's already been done, but I think it might make sense to evaluate what the probability is with this kind of legislation, and again, the momentum behind the governor's push on this, to think about what can we effectively do, and then decide on a small number of things that we can take on and maybe do something, complete it, and then move on to another task, so that we're not just like-minded people sitting around a table discussing what we'd like to do and not really being able to affect anything. Does that make sense?
I think we're in agreement that the survey and the mission
Yes.
statement are both things that make
That
sense
needs to
to.
be finished. Yes, I agree. But you know, I'm looking at some of the other things, like looking for a consultant, looking for funding opportunities, the bylaw for small-scale solar. I don't know if that's going to really help us at this point, if that steamroller is coming our way. Does it? I'm not suggesting that we drop it altogether, but I'm thinking we might want to table it until we know more, and then move forward with the survey and move forward with our own mission statement. But again, I think it might be wise to consider this potential legislation and revisit the mission statement, knowing what might be more possible. Does that make sense?
I guess one thing I would say is that the consultant,
Yes.
that's, I think, on Derek's radar screen.
It
as
is.
Being something that would be helpful to the town, is looking at sustainability issues. So that would be an argument in favor of us putting a pin on it,
Okay.
because it really is a town thing. So let's, that makes sense. And I think otherwise it makes sense to put it on pause. The battery storage issue, as I mentioned earlier, I think the state has kind of taken that out of our hands
Mm-hmm.
and has taken the battery storage bylaw that we did for solar and said, this is fine, but it's not just for solar. So it's, and there's a lot of language in the bill about battery storage, so that's a whole other thing. So, but I'm agreeing with you, Denise, that for the moment, why don't we put a hold on this? I mean, my dream would be that there would be a way at the end of whatever's done legislatively to build a better mousetrap for this town. You have a better, more harmonious and collegial way of finding and addressing renewable energy projects.
Right.
Because everybody knows what's acceptable and what's going to fly.
So again, I'm not trying to just put an end to what we've already done, but I also don't want to see, I agree, Sherry. I don't want to see us spinning our wheels on something that we may not even be able to go any farther on. So to back up a little bit, does anybody have a hard stop at 5 o'clock?
I do.
Yeah, I know you'd mentioned that. So let's we have about 6 minutes left until 5 o'clock, and I want to honor that time. So can we agree then we've agreed that we're gonna review the bills, we're gonna, come prepared to discuss and possibly draft a letter to our elected officials about that. The other committee matters of, the possible consultant, I'm sorry, are you still,
I've not pursued that at all since our last meeting.
that's perfectly understandable. So do you wanna, Sherry, what do you know about that? You said it's on Derek's radar?
It's on his radar, yeah, and, how I would define we is several of us between the planning board and me are looking at funding opportunities for various projects with Serpent and with money generally available. And so there may be a way for us to get some money as part of this. It's definitely on that radar screen.
Because I was thinking about, I forgot her name, I'm sorry. DJ, I'm sorry. I think we should all have to like wear forehead masks. Sorry, DJ had mentioned that it would be great to have some kind of a list of what's here. What do we have? What are the existing solar projects? Are there, approximately how many town buildings, like commercial buildings in town, have solar on them? Approximately how many? So doing a census of this, I guess. Having a few dimes to rub together to have someone do that study, I think would be really helpful. So if we were looking at doing that kind of an audit of our town, that's something that funding could help us do. I also really like the survey. I still think,
So do I.
and I think that we need to find a way to break it up a little bit,
Yeah,
because
that's
it's
what I
too
was
long
gonna
in
say.
one fell swoop.
I was gonna suggest that, we could
Break it into pieces.
break it into several
Right.
smaller surveys. There's a bunch of topics in there, just
Right.
break them up by topics.
Right, but so I think that, during our next meeting, let's revisit the survey, and.
Well, I'll go so far as to say that I'll do, a second draft of, multi-component, and then we can go from there and see, what we want to do. Because now with the battery issue, well, that's up for grabs, so at this point, it's probably premature to do anything about surveying that. But-
Yeah.
Right, well,
But
and
it still wouldn't hurt to know how many, automobiles have
right,
in-house chargers, and how many people are parking EVs in their garages.
I think our fire department representative said that they don't have that information. I think we're
right,
relatively.
a survey would be
Yeah,
really
so that
useful.
would be helpful.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, and I think it also, the way that it's written gives us a sense of people's acceptance of it
Right.
as well.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah, I think there was a recent battery fire in a garage. But it looks, nobody said it was an EV that caught on fire in a garage, but it said there was a fire, there was really extensive damage. It seemed as if it could have been an EV.
right. So, and forgive my clumsy facilitation here. I try to be a little more concise moving forward, but it feels like we have some marching orders for our next meeting. I'll come back with the mission statement as it has been drafted so far, and we'll look at that. If we have time, we could look at that at the next meeting, especially in light of having read the legislation and maybe suggest any tweaks we might need to make. But is there anything else that anyone would like to add to a potential agenda for the next meeting? Any other orders of business today?
If we can do 1 minute of 6A on the hydroelectric at Tremont Dam. I don't know anything about
Oh, So there's actually an article in the Wareham Week magazine from July 4th on page 10 that someone made me aware of, someone from the Wareham Land
Land trust.
Trust made me aware of a resident that lives near the Tremont Pond. They, without any kind of prior notice to the people who lived on the pond, drained it, so that they could, because there was the dam is dangerous and it needs to be replaced. It's just the way it was done was kind of shocking to the adjacent neighbors to the pond. And part of it is there was a communication issue from the town, or at least clearly this homeowner experienced a communication. She had no idea what was happening and had almost no idea who to turn to find out what was going on. Finally managed to get some information about it, but one of the things they're considering is hydroelectric on that. When that dam is rebuilt, that they might be doing hydroelectric on it. So my suggestion is read the article, and then for the next meeting, I'll try to come back with more information about whether or not they're really considering that. Where does that stand? And who might we find out about? Because that's something that I think we could, there's more than one pond with a dam on it in this town that needs to be repaired. So, is that something that we could recommend become part of the dam replacement anywhere that a dam is repaired in our town? Or is that feasible? What does it look like? Who would be interested? That kind of thing. So my suggestion, did y'all get that? I think I had asked Linda to send it out with the agenda when we were talking about it. There was a letter, or there was an email, a long email that I think went out. Or did I say that I was going to bring it to the meeting?
I think you said you were gonna.
Okay, my apologies. I will forward this to Linda to distribute to everybody. I'll forward a link to the article. This surmises it nicely,
Okay.
and gives you an idea of what's going on.
Yeah, it's, I think everybody can probably access that online too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be, but it's always an issue under the open meeting law whenever we send stuff around. It should be a no-brainer, but it's not.
I should have picked up 5 or 6 copies of the newspaper,
Oh,
but it's on page 10 of the July 4th.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah, it's-
as long as you cite
Yeah.
it, cite it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
page
It's
10 of
easy
the
to-
July 4th Wareham Week, and it's Tremont Pond drains as town pulls the plug on dam. But again, if hydroelectric is a potential, I think it's worth us finding out about it and seeing if we can make recommendations for other dam replacements going forward. Anything else for today? Can I have a motion to?
I'll make a
adjourn?
motion to adjourn the meeting.
To
Second.
defeat.
Oops, I can't second.
Actually,
There I go voting again.
Next
At
meeting
5:05.
date, if we're looking at next month, sorry,
That's good.
if we're looking at a month from now, which would be August. Do Tuesday still work for everybody?
Yeah,
Yeah, just not this one.
they're as good or as bad as either.
How about the 13th?
Not good for me.
Okay.
If you belong to the land trust, by the way, that's their
Oh, that's
annual
the
meeting.
cruise, right.
Oh, really, annual meeting is the nicer way to say that.
The meeting, the cruise
We're
meeting.
newly joined members.
Okay, so the
Yeah.
20th is
Others
not gonna
agrees.
work. What about the 27th?
So,
August 27th?
Yes.
Okay.
At 4 p.m.
4 p.m.
School back in session.
Okay, so we're pinning August 27th at 4 p.m. for the next meeting.
And Madam Chair, you'll need to make sure that a room is available and get it reserved.
Okay, I will figure out, I will ask someone who knows how to do that when this meeting is adjourned. Thank you for hanging with me. I'll be more organized
no,
next
it's
You
time.
did great.
So we have a motion to adjourn.
And it was seconded.
Second, all those in favor of letting
Aye.
the building? Any opposed? All right, thank you
Unanimous.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.